Okay, welcome to What's New in Bulk Mailer Highlights from the August release, a Satori software webinar. Before we get started, let's go over just a couple of things that we've got going on. First off, if you're into the whole social media thing, and we at Satori are, Kim blogs and she tweets and posts, and she's a big social person, and well, we're all kind of getting that way in our old age. But if you're into the whole social media thing, you can connect with Satori Software via Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. Next, this webinar is being recorded, so if we run long or you have to drop off for some reason, or it turns out that there's something here you would like someone else to hear, this afternoon I will be posting the recording of this webinar up on satorisoftware.com on the webinars section, so feel free to go grab that. In addition, I will be posting the deck from this. So the slide deck that you're about to view, we're going to be posting that up there, and you can go download that as a PDF as well in case you want to see what's going on. Next, and now this is my favorite part of the whole webinar. I'm super excited about this webinar anyway, because release notes means the product is changing, and we're going to talk a little bit about why the product's changing, but obviously questions are going to come out of that. And if you've got questions, please put them into the question box on the right-hand side of the screen. We're going to take those questions, and I will present those to Kim. And it's kind of fun because it gives me an opportunity to pretend that it's me asking the questions and not you smart people. But Stump Kim is the name of the game. So if you've got something that you want to know about bulk mailer, or about the release, or about Satori software, or about Kim's tea, because she's got a particularly fragrant, looks like a black and orange tea maybe, if you'd like to know about that. Questions, in any case, we'll take all comers in the question box, and I'll make sure those get passed along to Kim. Final point, this webinar is scheduled to last 60 minutes. Now, Kim's got 16 slides here, and she's settled in with a huge cup of tea, so I think we're probably going to run right up against the full hour, including questions in there. We do want to be respectful of your time. If you have to drop off, the recording will be posted on satorisoftware.com, and we'll try to give you a time call at the top of the hour just to let you know what is going on. Now, today we're going to be hearing from Kim Mock. Kim is a senior product manager for Satori Software and has worked here for 117 years, right, Kim?
Almost.
Okay.
Not quite 100 yet.
It just seems like 117 years. In any case, Kim's the product owner for Bulk Mailer, and so it's kind of cool because she's going to talk to us from the product owner perspective, the person who actually has the skin in the game on these changes and why they're coming about.
Right.
And I'm Rob Perrin. I'm the Director of Multimedia for Satori Software, which basically means that, I'm hosting this thing. And as I mentioned, I'll be the one collating your questions and passing them along to Kim. So feel free to drop those in at any time, and I will poke my nose in periodically, or otherwise I will batch those questions up at the end. Which do you prefer, Kim?
We can take questions as we go, or we can do it at the end. Just
keep
those questions in as they come to your mind, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible.
Perfect. And I like questions because they run the webinar long. I really appreciate that. And we got a lot to cover here. So let's take a look at Kim's agenda, and this gives me an opportunity to also hand off control to her. So Kim, what do we got today?
Thanks, Rob. So we're really excited to present to our bulk mailer customers the August release of bulk mailer. So as you know, we update bulk mailer every other month, and so we have a bunch of new changes that we've integrated, some bug fixes, and we wanted to kind of give everybody an idea of what the changes are and what to expect from the releases that are coming later in the year. So this kind of gives us a little bit of a chance to interact with our customers, to kind of see what we've already done and then what we're working on for the next release, and hopefully get some feedback from you to kind of get an idea of what you'd like to see in a future release.
And I mentioned that I was super excited about this webinar, and part of that is because this is software. It's a living thing. It's something that evolves not just because of regulatory changes and not just because Kim sat in her office and came up with a great idea that she wanted to see, but these things are customer driven.
Right.
And that gets me excited as the guy who sits here in this darkened studio. And, when customers call in and we talk to them and they have ideas, we have the opportunity to turn that back into changes in the product. And so I'm excited to work at a place where the software actually changes in response to customer feedback.
Right, and it changes pretty quickly.
Some people don't do that. Some companies don't do that, but it's really pleasing here that that's important to you as a product owner.
Yeah, the primary driver around our changes in our products, other than the regulatory stuff. That's just the stuff we have
We're
to
stuck
do.
with that.
Yeah.
That's nuts and bolts.
But to really make the products useful and user friendly and really powerful and a really good tool for our customers is something that really drives my satisfaction as an employee here at Satori, being able to have a product that meets the needs and hopefully can give that extra bit of productivity to our customers is a really big focus.
It's cool. When I'm out on the road at some customer-oriented event, customers will always come up afterwards and they say, I wish it did this, or I have this. And so I generally say, well, go ahead and submit that. Let us know, call support, however you need to go about it. And so it's so cool when we do a webinar like this and we see the other end of this. Well, here you go. Yep. You asked for it. This is the thing you wanted. Now here it is.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Very cool.
Right. So we've got a lot to talk about today. I'm hoping to have a lot of time at the end for questions and answers as well. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I wanted to talk to is folded self-mailers. So those of you who are in the letter mail space are probably very familiar with folded self-mailers at this point in time. So basically, this is any type of a mail piece where it's not really in an envelope, so it's not sealed on all four sides. And so back in 2013, there were these brand new rules that were announced. And this was after a big, long study that the post office did with mailers about how the different makeups in mail and the different designs and how many tabs and where do you put them, how that actually resulted when you actually put that mail into a sorting machine. So what had happened is they realized with a lot of these folded self-mailer type designs, there were a lot of them that were getting shredded in the machines. And so
and that's bad, right?
Generally, you want your mail piece to end up intact when it gets into your mailbox, right? Generally, because the nicer that mail piece looks when it's in the mailbox, the better response you're going to get from that mailing. So, but folded self mailers, just from a design perspective and from a marketing perspective, you really want them to pop. You really want to have some interesting designs to entice the reader to open up that mail piece and receive the rest of your message. So there was this big balance between the mailers and the post office to see exactly what is going to actually be able to run on the equipment versus what the marketing needs are, what the design needs are for these mail pieces.
And these pieces are popular now.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty small overhead. If you have a folder in your shop, then you definitely want to use it, right? You've bought that machinery. You want to make sure that you're running it to its best capacity, and also they're effective. So there are some really interesting designs that you can see around folded self-mailers that really become really interactive with the customer, and so they really can be a really good tool from a marketing perspective, just to be able to get that interaction with the customer. So this is something, maybe if you're just sending out a utility bill, you'd put it on an envelope, but if you have some type of a coupon or if you have some type of a tear-off piece that you want to integrate, anything where you can have someone actually physically interacting with that paper is a really positive thing, because again, that kind of enhances that mail moment.
I just got one of those number 2s this weekend.
That
folded one with the tab on either end.
Yeah, and I get those fairly often because that's a really common one for sales, like for coupons and things like that. So so what they did was they put together all of these standards back in 2013. There was one little gotcha that they had with this, though, is that the folded self-mailer design is actually just slightly smaller than what you would consider to be a standard letter. So letter size can go all the way up to 11 inches long and up to 3.3 or 3.5 ounces, depending on whether you're machinable or not. However, folded self-mailers are just a slightly bit smaller, just to make sure that it'll run through that automation equipment. And we actually found that some mailers were getting caught up by that, because in the previous versions of bulk mailer, if you selected a standard mail letter and you entered a length of 11 inches, it would say, oh, okay, this is a regular letter, we're good to go, and you would just kind of continue on your way. Well, once you're into production, it's too late, right? You've already got your mail piece, you've already got things manufactured, and then you would wind up having to pay extra non-machinable charges, and do you have to wind up paying a flat rate for this? And it wound up getting really expensive for customers. So what we did in this latest release of bulk mailer is we added a subtype of machinable letters called folded self-mailers, or FSMs. And so you'll see that now in the sort class and piece type screen if you're using the standard wizard, and I'll show you the power wizard here in a bit as well. And you'll notice that the new dimensions are actually listed over on the side there. And what'll happen is if you go in and you enter in, if you select this piece type and you enter in a size that is not compliant with the folded self mailer rules, then we'll give you a warning, and it'll tell you, hey, your piece is too long, it's too heavy, whatever it needs to be. And that gives you that notification, hopefully before you've actually started production, so that you can actually be valid in the way that you send your folded self mailers. So this, in the grand scheme of things, it's not some fancy bell and whistle, but it's something that we heard quite a bit from a lot of customer site visits that I've been on. We've had a lot of feedback through the support team that this is something that's going to be kind of a gotcha for some of our customers.
And you really only need this to catch one big mailing to save you. I mean, that's one big mailing with the additional charges for being non-machinable could be a big chunk of cash.
Exactly. So this is something that we got some feedback from customers, and we were able to add it into the product, and you guys can use it once you install that August release. If you're using the Power Wizard, it's available there as well. So you'll select your letter size piece, and then the checkbox there for folded self mailers. This is available for standard mail and first class mail. So you'll see that option on both screens.
Cool.
So the next one that we wanted to talk about is something that I think our customers will be pretty excited about, is 1 foot in EMM trays. So this is something that has been kind of done on a ad hoc basis in reality for forever, but it actually hasn't been something that's been legal by DMM regulation until January. So what happens is if you have a taller letter size, so it's something that's not going to fit in your standard 1 foot or 2 foot tray, then you bump up into what's called the EMM tray. So it's extended, I don't remember what the MM stands for, but it's an extended tray. It's just a little bit taller, and it's for those slightly taller letter pieces. And what can happen though is you have your full EMM trays, which are about 2 feet long, but then you might have some overflow trays, you might have some undersized trays, and then if you're putting all of those undersized trays into a full EMM tray, then you wind up having what's called an air tray, where basically most of the thing that you're shipping in that tray is just air. So it winds up being a big waste of space.
So
right?
Why is it called an air tray?
I know it's a little
it's confusing, Kim.
It's a little confusing. That's not the official USPS term, but that's kind of what I've heard it being called in the industry is this idea of an air tray. Basically, you're just shipping air. It's kind of a waste of space, and so. Mailers from a reality perspective had been preparing those undersized trays in 1 foot containers for forever. They've just been doing that, and in fact, a lot of different postal facilities would encourage it because who wants to ship air, right? It doesn't make any sense at all. But unfortunately, we couldn't, as a software company, make that change because it wasn't something that was valid via the DMM. And so after years of lobbying, we've actually been lobbying the DMM office to update this for many years. They finally did it in January, and so we were able to make that change in our products now that it's a valid way to prepare your mail. So to do that inside of Bulk Mailer, you'll have your screen here for your sorting preparation. And once you go into the advanced tray settings dialog, that's just right there in the advanced options there, you'll have the option to select which container types you'd like to use. Now, by default, if you're selecting if you enter a mail piece size that's larger than your standard 1 or 2 foot trays, it'll automatically select EMM trays, just like it always has. But you can go in here and you can select the 1 foot and EMM trays. You'll see it right there at the bottom. And then once you do, then it'll display all the options for your 1 foot and your EMM trays. So there's one thing to kind of note with this, and that's because your pieces are going to be slightly taller than what could fit completely vertical inside of a 1 foot tray, you will probably need to angle your pieces back. So you're not going to be able to go completely vertical. You might have to angle them back just a little bit to make them fit. So we allow you to play with the minimum and maximum settings here just to make sure that all the mail pieces that are in that tray are going to fit. So you probably won't be able to get as many in as would fit completely vertical there. So you want to play with your minimum and maximum settings there, and we will display the correct information now in your qualification report and your eDoc. So everything should match up, and everything should be good to go there. Again, this is something that we've been wanting to do for so long, and now that it's finally legal from a DMM perspective, we were able to integrate that in this release.
So we get customer feedback that we can implement now.
Mm-hmm.
And we get customer feedback that, well, it's a great idea, but perhaps the USPS is not caught up yet.
Yeah, in this one, unfortunately, it was just one of those little regulatory niggles that we couldn't get around until they were able to amend the ADMM with that.
And we're sort of stuck at that point, because no matter how much a customer wants that, if it's not legal.
Yeah. So it's just kind of, we got to stay just enough on the rails to make sure that everybody is compliant, because we don't want you to start preparing a mailing that you're not going to get accepted. And so even while many postal facilities throughout the United States were actively encouraging people to use these 1-foot containers,
it's not the letter of the law.
It wasn't the letter of the law, and there were some facilities that will not accept anything that's not 100% to the letter of the law. So.
But that's cool, because we take that customer feedback and we implement it in the product. But in this case, you took the customer feedback and implemented it in the USPS.
We did as much as we could. So again, this was something that, I remember 4 or 5 years ago hearing about this from customers, and like, why can't we select this one, EMM and 1-foot tray option? And so
Not our rule.
Not our rule, unfortunately, but we did take that feedback back to the post office and advocated for our customers to get that changed.
That's the long route to implement customer feedback, but it's kind of cool that we can do that.
So sometimes it's the short fix and sometimes it's the long fix. So we try and do both. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is everyone's favorite topic, intelligent mail barcodes. So within the intelligent mail barcode, there is a field called the service type identifier, or the STID. And don't try to misappropriate the acronym there, but
who, me?
It's a little.
What are you saying?
It's a little interesting, but the service type identifier is the key field inside the intelligent mail barcode that tells the post office how to handle that mail piece. So is it a full service piece? Is it first class? What return codes do you want to what return feedback do you want from the post office when it comes to that? And part of that has to do with ACS. So ACS is the address change service. That's that post-mailing feedback that you can get about move information from the post office. And what they did was they actually opened up the change service requested option 2 for standard mail and bound printed matter letters and flats just here in, and actually I think it just went live yesterday. It was the first day that you could actually use these new service type identifiers. And so that option 2 basically means if you set that as your ACS type in your service type identifier, it means that mail piece is going to get forwarded for the first 13 months, and then after that, then the mail piece will be destroyed. So if we're talking about standard mail and bound printed matter, the standard mode of operation is we're not going to forward it, and we're just going to toss it. So we're just going to destroy that mail piece if it has a forwarding information attached to it. So with this one, there is a little bit of a charge for it because there is that forwarding time for the first year and a month there. But anytime there's any information about that address that could be sent back to you, you get an electronic notification. So you kind of get the complete service there. It's almost like a first class mail service that you get with this option 2. So with first class mail, that mail piece would just automatically be forwarded for free. If you're doing standard mail and bound printed matter, you have a little nominal charge to get that forwarding service. But it, for that really important standard mail and bound printed matter, then you can add that in the service type identifier. And so we added that as one of the ACS options there in the intelligent mail settings screen. So you just select the option that applies to you. You'll see the new CSR option 2 there, and then we'll just generate that information, put it into the intelligent mail barcode and the eDoc as well if you're using eDoc. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that we've changed in this in this version of bulk mailer. The first one is we've updated all the DMM references. So one of the interesting things that the post office did in the earlier this year was they actually took the DMM and I don't want to use the term optimize, but they made it, they in theory made it smaller. So they took a lot of the redundant language out. So there were a lot of things about, say, for example, letter mail that applies to all letter mail, regardless of whether it's first class or standard mail or periodicals. So what they did was they kind of consolidated all of the references there. And then of course that became a renumbering. So all the DMM references, it's kind of like chapter and verse of exactly where this regulation is for preparing that type of mail. And so what we've done is we've gone throughout the product and updated those DMM references so that it reflects the new DMM location and not the old DMM location.
Makes good sense. Now, our coworker, Bob Shimmick, Senior Director of Postal Affairs here at Satori, has a printed copy of the DMM in his office. Do you suppose he's going to tie up our printer again to print a whole other copy?
That's going to be a lot of toner.
Yeah, it was last time.
Yeah,
for days you'd go by the printer and you couldn't use it because Bob was printing the DMM.
Yeah, it's a little bit smaller. It's not as much smaller as I was expecting it to be. Yeah. They mostly just renumbered a lot of things.
I tried to explain to him that online was very convenient, but he's kind of old-fashioned that way.
There's something to be said for the old ways, though.
It's easier to look up.
Yeah. So we updated all the references there. We also made some changes to the way that we identify mail owners and mail preparers. And so this has kind of been an ongoing trial, unfortunately, because a lot of the mail owner and mail preparer validations happen after you submit a mailing. So it's not something that you get a warning straight off the bat. And so what'll wind up happening is if you misidentify your mail owner and your mail preparer in your eDoc, you can wind up with a scorecard error. And for those of you who are familiar with your mailer scorecard, you know that they're threatening, they're mentioning that eventually they may be charging people who have egregious errors on their mailer scorecard. So we're trying to do what we can to mitigate that beforehand. So we did make some changes to the way we identify mail owners and mail preparers if you are the preparer and the mail owner at the same time. So you'll see some small changes in mail.dat for that. We're still trying to figure out exactly what's happening with mail.xml. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to validate with the post office that our solution is the right solution. So we want to make sure that's valid before we actually implement the mail.xml changes. And we also changed a little bit in the shipping services file. So if you're doing packages, then there was a small error around the mail consolidator field. So we've been able to correct that as well. So little changes just to try and make your life a little bit easier there. The next one is we actually updated NAICS codes. So this one's a little bit obscure, but inside of the Move Update, when you sign up for your PAF, so when you sign up for your processing acknowledgement form each year with us to identify that, hey, you're going to be using Move Update and identifying you and signing that you agree to all the terms that the post office has. One of the things you have to fill out is your NAICS code, and it's just a code that represents the type of business that you're in. And so those codes are updated periodically, and so we just updated the list that's available inside a bulk mailer. And you can actually go in and you can actually search for your industry. So I was able to search like software, and it brings up the software publisher's code there. So you should be able to use those right away. Another thing that we changed around the processing acknowledgement forms around Move Update is there was an obscure rule inside of the NCOA link regulation that says that you can't use a PO box to identify. I know it's kind of weird, but you can't use a PO box to identify your company inside of a processing acknowledgement form. They actually want the physical address of your company.
That's going to take some people by surprise.
Yeah, it's a little obscure, a little weird, but I can kind of see it because they're underneath the Privacy Act of 1974, so they have their own regulations that they have to adhere to, which aren't necessarily what the post office would require. So I think that might have something to do with it. But if you're filling out your PAF form, you won't be able to identify yourself with a PO box anymore. They'll pop up a warning saying hey, you can't use a P.O. box, use your physical address.
Hmm.
So that's that part. We do want to talk a little bit about the data updates with every single release of bulk mailer. We do update the data that's being processed on the back end. We update the address correction data, and for our August release, that data is going to be valid through the end of September. And then also for the pre-sort data. So this is going to be your labeling lists, the mail direction file, all the stuff that drives which pieces go into which containers is all going to be valid for mailings through September 30th as well. And then the next version of the pre-sort data that we update will be available probably next week. So we're going to be we'll get that information from the post office here probably Monday, because they think the first is the Saturday, so we usually don't get it until the next working day, and then we'll test that and get that out in the service pack there. So the next thing that I wanted to do actually isn't specifically related to this release. It's just kind of a productivity tip. So for those of you who've been using bulk mailer for a while, a lot of the questions that I get from customers on site is, how can I get more out of the software that I already have? What are some things that I can do that I don't know about already? What are some things that might be some hidden gems inside of the product that I already have? And so I wanted to take a little bit of time today just to talk about one of those things that I find really valuable. I'm a little prejudiced. It's my product, so I think it's all very valuable. But there's kind of a neat little feature that's hidden in your home screen. And so if you go over to on the upper right-hand screen, there's this
If it's a neat feature, why is it hidden?
Well, you can't put everything right up front. So
the mysteries of software.
Well, it's a setting, right? And so it's a setting, you set it, and then the results will be saved there forever. So let's talk a little bit about what this is. So you'll see over on the right-hand side, there's this actions button over on the side there. So if you click on that, there's an option there called select columns. And what you can do with this option is it allows you to customize your view of your templates. And this is actually true both for your mailing templates that are on your home screen, but as well as all of the other templates that you see throughout bulk mailer. And what you can do here is you can actually select which fields of data you actually want to display on your home screen or any of your template screens. So there's some really interesting fields that you can actually view on this as well, and it'll actually be saved. So every single time you open up bulk mailer, you'll be able to see these views as well. So one of the ones that I really like is the sort postage. So this tells you how much that mailing cost when you last sorted it. So you can see which ones you've already pre-sorted, because those are going to be the ones that have that value, but also how much that mailing costs. So you don't have to go into that mailing, reopen a postage statement just to view how much that cost. Another thing that you can list is the date that you've done processing. So for example, if you wanted to add the address correction date or the move update date, then it'll actually show you when you sorted and when you did your address correction and move update for that mailing. So if I do that here, then you can see here I've got my sort postage column. And another thing that you can do inside of this this template view here is you see each of the columns. So you've got your name, your records, your client. This is a bulk mailer business example here. So I've got my mailing clients there. I've got my postage, and you can actually sort by each of these columns just by clicking that column header. And you can also click and drag each of these columns to create your perfect view. So if you want to have your sort postage way up front, because that's a field that's really important to you, you can just click and drag it to where you want it to be. And then it allows you to have a view that shows you where you're at when you're processing your mailing. So if you see a mailing that doesn't have, for example, a move update date attached to it, you know that you haven't run NCOA link on it. And so you need to run through your NCOA link to make sure that everything's valid and up to date. So it's just kind of a neat little tip that's kind of hidden there. But once you set it up the way that you want it, then it's saved for every single time you use bulk mailer.
It's kind of cool. I was going to mention that we've been doing this series of webinars that we call Getting the Most Out of Bulk Mailer. Now, we did the first 4 of those. We called that Season 1.
Right.
And they are posted up on the SatoriSoftware.com website in the webinars section. But we've got what we're calling Season 2.
Right.
And
Yep.
it's 4 more of these. And so if tips like that are something that you're interested in, you might want to go check out the recordings that are already up there. There's some pretty cool ones. And then I think we've settled on Merge Purge, which is this huge, powerful, scary thing that does some pretty cool things. But we're going to spend an hour or thereabouts talking about the functionality of Merge Purge coming up in season 2, and the dates for that will be announced shortly. But
Right.
these sort of tips and tricks are things that we do want to get out there because the software is incredibly powerful, and people might be missing out on stuff that they can use. So, just a heads up, have a look for those webinars already posted, and look for some more of those coming up. And who knows, maybe this is worthy of slipping in there on one of those.
We'll see. Yeah, there's a lot of little hidden gems inside a bulk mailer,
Yep.
and like I said, I've had a lot of feedback from customers that are like, how can I get more out of my existing product? So we're trying to add that in wherever we can.
We've heard that, and we definitely want you to get more out of it.
Exactly, exactly. So talking about getting more, let's talk about what's coming in the October release. So we're actively working right now on the next version of bulk mailer, which will be coming out in October. We've got some pretty exciting things that are coming up. The first is Windows 8.1 and Windows 10 support. So for those of you who are operating system junkies like me, have been actively watching the Windows 10 updates from Microsoft, in theory, we should start to see the final release of Windows 10 this week. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of an exciting time, and we're in Seattle. We've got Microsoft just across the pond there, and
Can huck a rock from here and hit Microsoft.
I've got a lot of friends who work there, and they've been working really hard on this. And I've heard some really positive things. The technical preview, has been really promising, and so
Now it comes out for home users on Wednesday and businesses on Saturday.
in theory, that's what they keep slipping the date. So I'm hoping that everything will be out this week. But if you've got a home computer, I know on mine I've got that little Windows button down by the time in the bottom of the dashboard there, and it warns you all the time, hey, Windows 10 is coming. Make sure you've reserved your spot. So that
Because they're going to run out, right? Yeah.
it's all
It's
electronic.
not like a stadium seat.
Yeah, but they're definitely wanting to get everybody moved over. From a support standpoint for Microsoft, it makes sense to have everybody on the same operating system. So we're actively looking at what we'll need to do from a product perspective to make sure that we support those. At this point, we haven't found anything major that we'll need to change, but it's something that we'll be supporting going forward. As always, we'll be adding more bug fixes. And then the big change that's going to be happening for October is we're actually going to be moving to electronic fulfillment. So for those of you who've been bulk mailer customers for quite a while, you're very familiar with the bulk mailer disc that you get every other month. And it has all the information. It has the product updates. It has all the data file updates that are involved there. However, it takes a little while for us to fulfill those discs. We've been sending out electronic notifications as soon as our builds are ready to our customers who have an email listed in their account, and you can go ahead and download those today. So if you get your email, your fulfillment email, there's just a link. You download it, unzip it, and then you can run that. And it takes a couple hours to download. It's a fairly large file.
That's those data files.
Yep, it's those address correction files that are pretty big. But you can, even with waiting the few hours to download, you can get and install your update of bulk mailer well before you actually get your physical disc today.
I read where Netflix just tipped where their streaming service now supplies more movies than their physical DVD service.
Yeah.
Have we done that?
That's where we're kind of moving.
Yeah,
we're moving in that
more
direction.
towards the electronic fulfillment.
Yeah. So it's kind of a sign of the times. Most people have a broadband connection at this point, so they're able to access this.
This would be no fun over dial-up.
Yeah, this I would definitely not recommend that over my old 14.4 modem from my my computers back in the day. But
that fancy laptop of yours, that doesn't have a modem in it, does it?
I don't think it even does anymore. I don't even know if anybody knows what a modem is
Nobody's
anymore.
got a phone line to plug it into anymore.
Right. But so starting with the October release is going to be the last release where we physically ship a disk as the default fulfillment mechanism. So by default, you'll be getting that email, and you'll be able to download directly from that email, and then you'll be able to go from there. But if you do want to continue your disk fulfillment, then we'll be sending out more information as we have some more information available to allow you to continue to get that disk, but that's not going to be the default anymore. So if you want to opt into getting disks, then that's definitely something you can do. It just won't be the default anymore. So stay tuned to get more information about that. All right.
All right. Okay, so this is the Stump Kim part of the program here. And so we definitely want to take your questions, and I've got a bunch of them that have been coming in here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start on these. Kim, let's see. When creating a job in Job Builder, do we need to have a mailing open to add the FSM verification to the process? I have encountered issues when trying to modify my jobs to add the FSM without an open mailing using the Power Wizard.
Okay, that's interesting. That's something that I'll have to look at. It sounds like you've already downloaded and installed the August release, so that's a good sign. So I'll have to take a look at that, but you shouldn't have to have a mailing open because the change that's made is actually done on the template, which shouldn't have anything to do with the mailing that you have open. So I'll double check that. I'll have our QA staff take a look at that.
Perfect. When will the customer ref ID field be available to populate on mail.dat?
So I'm kind of curious what I'd like to kind of get a little bit deeper into that question to kind of understand what you'd like to use that customer reference field for. So it's an optional field in mail.dat. It's not something that the post office requires, and so that's why we don't have it available right now. But I'd like to kind of
Hey, Jeff, if you'd like to retype that question, a little more information, I'll re-ask her here. So feel free to spend a minute kind of elaborating on that one. We'll go ahead and take it. Do you have to change the paths that currently have a P.O. box, or can we change it when the renewal is due?
Oh, good question. Yeah, you can actually you can continue using the path that you already have. So we didn't inactivate any paths during this whole process. The path that you currently have is still totally valid, and you can just update it when you renew. So no action required today for that.
When will Bulk Mailer Business allow IM data inputs? SE 338. This is great. I like Stump Kim. This is a fun game.
No, that's a good one. So today, actually, in Bulk Mailer Pro and Business, you can actually input the intelligent mail barcode information if, for example, you're using an outside vendor, or if you have an outside way of being able to track your sequence numbers. There is a field called IM piece data that you can import into that should grab that information and automatically populate your intelligent mail barcodes. But since you have an SE number, that sounds like there might be something particular about what you're trying to import that you need to take a look at. So let me take a look at that one, but you should be able to use that IM piece inputs field, and if you're not, then let me check and see what's going on with that one.
So what happens here is that these questions are logged against who asked them, and then Kim will get a copy of that. So if you've asked a specific question and she said that she'll get back to you, what'll happen is I'll pass that along to her. She'll follow up, and then either her or someone, I assume, usually it's you.
Usually it's me,
but if not, whoever the expert is on that particular area will be getting back with you probably via email. So just a heads up that you'll get followed up directly on that if you manage to stump her indeed. Jeff's back, and he says, customer reference ID. The customers see the job in their portals on Postal One and use it to identify which job it is.
Oh, okay. So you're wanting to use that for your own internal job number. I can see how that would be useful. Let me, I think we have a request in our database for that. So let me make sure your name is attached to that, because the more customers that request something, the higher up in priority it goes. So we try to attach a customer request every time we get a new customer asking for something, and it just kind of helps bump things up in priority.
All right. Garrett is asking, he says, this is a little off topic, but is there any chance of an original all option similar to the accept all function at the end of move update?
Hmm, interesting. So, I'm kind of curious what the value of that is, what the purpose of that is, because if you're not going to be accepting the changes, why would you run through address correction? So that might be something that we can do a follow-up call on, just to kind of talk through that, because um, whenever we have a change like that, we want to make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons. So let me see if I can do a follow up on that one, because it's a little bit of an interesting question there.
Okay, I like this. This is a lot of fun. Kim's frantically sipping away at coffee here while to her tea while I'm talking. But is there a reason why, when you cast certify, some addresses come back as invalid, but if you look, the primary address is in the valid range?
Right. So kind of an interesting thing with that is there's a setting in your DPV settings that selects what to do if the secondary is invalid. So, for example, if you have a high rise or an apartment where where the physical address, so that the building number is correct, but you don't have a valid secondary, then there is a flag inside of the cast wizard there where you can select whether the secondary should be considered an error or whether it should be considered a valid address. So the one thing that I want to caution when it comes to that is anytime you don't have a valid secondary, then you can risk not having that piece delivered. So regardless of whether you're getting your postal discounts, the main thing that we want to make sure that we're focusing on is actually getting the mail delivered to the
Mhm.
right person, right? So if you don't have a secondary, it's kind of it used to be that the mail carrier would take a look at that and say, okay, well, I know that John Smith really is in apartment 2A, and so I'll deliver it to apartment 2A. And that was because the carriers were very familiar with their routes. They had the same routes for years and years and years. And
Not anymore.
and they were actively encouraged to do so, right? And they took pride in it. And a lot of carriers still take a lot of pride in that. But unfortunately, it was several years ago, they actually put out a memo to all the carriers saying, you know how that thing where you used to try and deliver to the right person, regardless of whether the secondary was correct or not? You don't have to do that anymore.
She came back and said it's not asking about a secondary, it's the primary that is a problem. So this
Okay.
might be something we need to follow up on, perhaps.
Yeah, and we're actually actively looking at our CAS engine right now. We've been doing some tweaks there on the back end. So if you could send in the notes some examples, or just email into support some examples of the addresses that you're having this problem with, we can take a look at it with the changes that we've made to the CAS engine to see if that's going to work better for you.
Okay, so let's see. Somebody here is having a problem with Bulk Mailer Pro keeping up with sequential serial numbers in full service automation mailings.
Hmm.
Does that sound familiar?
So that's one.
Got some follow-ups to do here, don't we?
Yeah, this is good stuff, because we do have this database of all of these different, you know, it's software. Nothing's absolutely perfect as much as we want it to be, and so there are all these different scenarios that we can't always account for, and so sequence numbers are something that we try and take very seriously. And so if you're having problems with that, if you've called into support, I'm sure we'll have your ticket notes there that we can take a look at. If you haven't called into support, then definitely make sure with any of these things that are bugs, right? You definitely want to make sure that you contact our support department. They actually have a login to the bug database that I use to prioritize all of our development work. So we have a really good dialogue with the support team. I actually meet with them once, usually twice a week, to look at the things that customers have that we have feedback, and we kind of look at them and see what's the impact, how are things going, and try and prioritize everything, because again, we
And
can't get to
there's a
everything.
lot of complexities to this. So
There
getting
are.
on the phone with those support guys, they're sharp. So
Hmm.
they'll be having an opportunity to ask the right questions to help debug this. Where you and I, well, you're kind of stuck with I'm reading off the screen here.
Well,
So
yeah, and
so
I
tell me,
don't
Kim.
have my database off to the side that I can start searching on,
Sure.
unfortunately.
No, I
But
totally
yeah.
totally understand. Great question, Deb. Deb wants to know, after October,
Hmm.
what's it going to cost her if she wants to keep getting a disc?
So that's something that I don't have the number for today,
Yeah.
but as we get that communication out to customers, so you to watch your inbox, watch your email, because you'll start to see that information. We're actually going to have a page on the website, but I didn't have the link to include on the PowerPoint today, but there is going to be a page on the website that will have all the information for opting into disk fulfillment, and so there will be an additional cost to that, but again, we think that getting that notification earlier and downloading it is way faster than getting a disk today. But that'll still be available.
All right. So Randall wants to know, his company's looking at upgrading to Windows 10,
Hmm.
and he's wanting to know whether he ought to wait until after the October release.
I think that would be wise. October, Windows 10 is brand new. It's going to be out here this week, and so there are even, if you only have bulk mailer running on your machine, then you're probably going to be pretty safe after the October release with Windows 10. However, if you have any other software that's installed on that machine, you'll want to make sure that that's compliant as well. I have heard some rumors from some of the other, like, kind of complex variable data printing software that's out there, that there've actually been a couple software packages where they're actively telling their users not to install Windows 10 until they've addressed it with a patch. As much as we like to be on top of it, I love looking at a new operating system and learning how it works and everything. But from a business perspective, I think it's wise to wait and make sure that everything's compliant before you upgrade.
Okay. So question about STID, my new favorite word. STIDs. The question is whether or not there are plans to update STID for first-class packages. Code specifically is 742. It's being retired on 531.
Yeah, and that one I actually have in queue, and I'm hoping to get that out in the October release. So that's something that we're actively looking at. So, yep, yep.
Is there a way to change the default bundle thickness from 6 inches to 3 inches?
Hmm. I wonder why there's 3 inches. That's kind of an interesting one. One way that you can actually do that is by cloning a template. So if you set up a template for how you want your mailing to happen, and you're not liking the defaults that are set, you can actually clone a template. So if you right click on it and say duplicate, I believe is the option. I don't think it's copy. I think it's duplicate template. And what you can do is it'll take over all the settings from the previous one, and then you can make the additional changes that are necessary there.
Is there a way to mark previously skipped duplicates for additional duplicate searches? Let me try this again. Is there a way to mark previously skipped duplicate records for additional duplicate searches?
There's not at this point in time. However, that's kind of an interesting feature request. I'll have to look at that and see what we can do.
Okay, and we're starting to run low on questions, but I guess that's good. We're running low on time too, right? So last chance to get your questions in here. Last one that I've got here says, I encountered a bug in the printing process. Pauses between trays were not working when we moved over to a Neopost printer. Talked to support. They talked to Neopost, and apparently it's a bug that's in the works. Everybody knows about this now. Any news on it? Does
Oh,
this
okay.
ring any bells with you?
Um, you know, I know that there have been some issues with certain Neopost printers. If you could type in which model you have, that'll help me to kind of narrow it down, because there are several Neopost printers that are out there, and we want to make sure that we're working seamlessly with all of those.
Is there a way to find out the addresses I have changed or fixed?
Yeah, so you can actually go in to if you go into the views area or the groups, you can actually do a filter based on the error code. So they call it an error code. It's actually a change code because not all the addresses are going to be errors. But if you have an error code that's anything other than a zero, then there's usually some type of a change that has happened to an address, or there's some kind of a problem where we weren't able to certify the address. So if we made a change and it's now a certified address, it'll be any code from 1 to 99, and then you'll be able to go in and see what those changes are.
Can that be exported?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an export field. You can view it in the views. You can filter on it through the groups section as well.
Susan, probably a good bet. If it's tough to figure that part out, go ahead and give support a call. I'd be willing to bet they can talk you through that in about 30 seconds flat. That's a good one for them. What about changing bundle size to 4.5 to make it easier for the production workers?
Yeah, so that's again something where you can set that in the advanced settings there for your sort templates, and if you want that to be your default, just clone the previous template that had that setting.
Let's see. The printer is a Neopost AS940.
AS940. Ooh, that's a new one. Okay, that's a relatively new printer. So I'll have to take a look at that. I don't know if I actually have one of those models in house, but we work really closely with Neopost, and so if I don't have one here, then I know somebody to call to do some tests on it.
Perfect. Okay. Well, let's see. Got a couple of questions rolling in here. Most of these are going to require individual follow-up, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up, I guess.
All right.
And we'll make sure that these questions do get followed up offline because we're going to run out of time otherwise. Please give us a call if you got a question. The phone number is on there. And did want to mention, Kim, thank you so much for coming by. As always, we appreciate having you in the studio as a product owner, and it's always fun for you to get in here because you're so enthusiastic talking about your products. Kim Mock, Senior Product Manager for Satori Software, owner of the bulk mailer product, our flagship product. Good to have you on board.
Thanks, Rob.
Oh, boy. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. We would appreciate it if you took just a brief moment to answer our survey as it pops up for you. The answers to that survey are how we change, how we modify, how we improve our webinar series. And so we'd like to make sure that these webinars are on track and that they address the sort of things that you're interested in. Our Getting the Most Out of Bulk Mailer series came out of some feedback that we got from those surveys. So please fill those out for us. It's really important for us to understand what we can do to make webinars more useful to you. As I mentioned, this webinar will be available in its entirety, as will the slide deck. I will post those up on satorisoftware.com. You'll be able to find those. Should be up there by this afternoon, Seattle time, so just a few hours away. By the time I get them posted up and processed, it should be waiting for you up there. For Satori Software, I am Rob Perrin, the Director of Multimedia Marketing, and I would personally like to thank you one more time for attending this webinar. And on behalf of all of us here at Satori, I would like to wish you smooth mailing ahead.